get started a little bit early. Okay, are we ready? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the first GSB executive debate for the 2013 election cycle. My name is Adam Gunther and I am the election commissioner for the government and student body. The Iowa State Daily has asked me to remind you all that the debate today is being filmed for the website and to keep talking and horsing around to a minimum. Tonight's debate is between Senators Dan Rudisky and Zach Powell and Director of Student Affairs and Senators Spencer Hughes and Hillary Fletcher. Tonight the questions will be discussing problems facing Iowa State and the student body as a whole. We will begin with a 4-minute opening statement and then two-minute question responses. We will close with another 4-minute closing statement from each candidate. Without further ado, we will begin with an opening statement from Spencer Hughes.
Well, first, thank you all for coming out tonight and braving the snow. You are the intrepid ones who actually came to the debate, and we all appreciate it up here. Like Adam said, my name is Spencer Hughes. I'm a candidate for president, and I'm a junior in speech communication and political science.
And I'm Hillary Fletcher, a sophomore in biological systems engineering and candidate for vice president. Okay. Spencer and I are running what we call a Students First campaign. So that means everything that we're pushing for and all of our ideas are truly focused on you, the students.
So we'll talk a little bit now about some issues that we think are important that may or may not come up in tonight's debate, some issues that we think provide some contrast between what we stand for and what our opponents stand for. The first thing that I want to touch on is one of the most important issues in this election regarding the GSB executive payments. Right now there are 3 positions in GSB that get paid for serving on an executive board, and they can receive as much as $37,000 per person just for serving as a student organization executive. This money comes right off the top of the funds that GSB could otherwise allocate to student organizations. Hillary and I believe that money can be put to better use, and one of the first things we'll do, if elected, is take that money and redirect it into the pot of funds that student organizations can access, and then change the rules so that happens automatically in the future. Because we don't think it's fair that every student pays extra so that GSB executives can pay nothing. That's really one of the biggest issues in this campaign. Some of the other projects that we'd like to work on, that we've already started working on in fact, are the creation of a bike share program at Iowa State so that a student can swipe their card and use a bike on campus, drop it off somewhere else, as well as the opportunity to use dining dollars at off-campus locations. We think this would be especially beneficial for students that live in the residence halls because they're required to purchase $9. So those are just a few of the items that we think create some contrast between the candidates, and we'll touch on some more issues down the line.
So as Spencer said, that is just a portion of our entire platform, and we look forward to discussing more of it tonight and giving you guys all the information that you seek.
We look forward to the debate.
Okay. Okay, are you going to reset?
Yep.
Okay. Next up we have Dan Rudisky and Zach Powell with their opening statement.
Okay, I'd like to begin by saying thank you for all of you who are being present in the room here, and also say thank you to those of you who are watching either of the recordings that are being taken. We do appreciate that you're looking into the election. And so with that, my name is Dan Rudisky. I'm a junior in computer science and political science, originally from Waverly, Iowa. I've been a part of GSB for the last 2 years, serving as a senator for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and also serving on the Finance Committee, as well as various other committees throughout the university.
And my name is Zachary Bauer, candidate for Vice President. I'm a sophomore in political science and journalism and mass communication. I have served on GSB as a senator since the end of my freshman year, and I also serve as the current Public Relations Committee Chair.
And Zach and I's campaign really centers around the fact that we think that GSB can be serving students better. We've dubbed our plan CPR because we think that GSB really needs to come back to life to work for students. We think that it hasn't done so in the last couple of years as well as it could have. So without further ado, I'll let Zach kind of kick it off and briefly summarize.
Okay, so the CPR, Dan and I dubbed communication. So just briefly, Dan and I see that GSB has an internal and external problem. Internally, the 2 executive and legislative branches have a lack of communication. So Dan and I would like to foster better partnerships between those 2 branches so that we're able to easily get projects and initiatives accomplished, because it really takes both branches to do that. Because typically the executive branch starts the project and then the Senate kind of throws their helping hand in with that. So by having better communication between those 2 branches, we'll be able to get those projects and initiatives done. And then externally, the students of Iowa State aren't really clear of what is going on at GSB. So they don't know what's going through Senate, they don't know where account balances stand, that sort of stuff. So Dan and I would really like to utilize the GSB website along with other social media to publicize that, because if students don't know what's going on, we're not able to get their input and get those projects and initiatives accomplished and represent them completely.
And so to kind of move along with our plan, our summary is projects. Projects are what you're going to hear about primarily during the election season, and this is no different. Zach and I's plans include continuing to pursue free e-textbooks for general education classes so that students don't feel quite so much of the burn when it comes to general education textbooks that you may never need again. Investigating the use of mass email lists by Ames businesses, advertising to students and not really diversifying the student experience as our student organizations on campus do. And those are just a couple of the projects that we have laid out for hopefully our next year in GSB. And to kind of wrap up the CPR portion is representation, because that is really the job of the government and the student body. Zach and I know that GSB needs to do a better job of representing students, representing all students and not just the students who are in GSB, not just our outlook, but really the outlook of every student who wants to have an impact and who wants to have input on what GSB is investigating and doing initiatives on. So I think that that is really very important, because Zach and I know we can't do it alone. We can't just rely on 2 people. We can't just rely on the 10 people we appoint. We really need to open it up and make sure that GSB is really serving students as best as it can. To touch on, I guess, the issue that Mr. Hughes talked about with the executive compensation, we do differ on that point. That is fair. I will note, however, that I did talk to one of the previous recipients of this, and she's noted that it really hasn't been an accurate portrayal of what goes on, and really the biggest picture of the executive compensation isn't being sold. And that was her opinion, not mine. So I'd ask that maybe we look into this with a little bit of a deeper investigation and not just the snapshot that we're portraying right here. And with that, I look forward to the debate. So does Zach, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you to both of you. We are now moving to the question portion. We will start with Spencer Hughes for a 2-minute response to the question. The first question is, ethics are important in leadership. How would you define ethics and maintain them in the role as the government and the student body president if elected?
Well, ethics are clearly important, like you said, Adam, and I think my own personal definition of ethics is doing the right thing regardless of who's watching. I think it's kind of simple like that. When you do the right thing because you know somebody's watching you, that's your reputation, but really your ethics, your character is composed by how you act, when the lights are off and when you can do whatever you want, but you still do the right thing. And that's vitally important, because the student body places their trust in the GSB as a whole, and especially the GSB president, because every student here, every student watching knows that the student fee dollars come to GSB. You're trusting us with that money. You're trusting us to do the right thing. And I think that's part of the reason why Hillary and I have such a focus on increasing the transparency of GSB. Posting on our website, on Facebook, on Twitter, every single time we spend a student fee dollar. And every single time a student fee expenditure is proposed. So that way students have the knowledge not only where their money has gone, but where their money is going to go down the line. And we think that's vitally important, because that helps keep people not only just informed, but also actively participating in that decision making of where the money's going and what's going on, really not necessarily behind closed doors, but not every student comes to our weekly meetings at 7 o'clock in the Campanile room. Not all of them even know that they exist. So I guess that is kind of behind closed doors when they aren't participating in that. So taking our information and bringing it to them, really shining a light on what we're doing, can only help us be more ethical, be better representing the student body as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Now we'll move on to the same question for Senator Wadisky.
And your question was on ethics.
The question was, ethics are important in leadership. How would you define ethics and use them as the president of the GSB next year?
Well, I would define ethics as not only doing the right thing when no one is watching or if someone's watching, but also being honest even when it's maybe not popular to do so. Maybe when people won't like to hear the truth. I think that the truth needs to be said. And that's very important to me, so that even when, maybe we fail at an initiative that we set out to do, or there is some roadblock or something that, we can't surmount, that needs to be said. Because honestly, sometimes GSB initiatives get tangled up in things that are beyond GSB's control, but instead of saying this is why it stopped, we just stop talking about it. Or, maybe that the honest thing is that GSB isn't set up right to do, something for student organizations or for students today. And I recognize that and I'm willing to say so. I've said so the last couple of years, I've said so throughout the spring, and I will continue to say so in the upcoming year. If something's not serving students right, then we need to fix it, because we can't allow GSB to continue on the same path if it's not going down the path that serves students best.
Thank you. Our next question comes from the audience. Yes, Jamie.
All right, I have a question. This is, I guess, aimed towards the president. How did you guys pick your running mates, and what qualities did they bring to your campaign?
So that question would be first directed to Senator Wadisky.
Well, Zach and I have been on Senate for the last year, and I really didn't have a large opportunity to get to know Zach really until we went to the Big 12 Student Government Conference, and we're both representing the Senate. And Zach and I had a chance to really kind of get to know each other and also kind of learn how each other think and how we react to ideas. And one of the things I chose Zach for is not just for being there to bounce ideas off of, but somebody to tell me if I have a bad idea. Because I know that my ideas might not be the best in the world, they might not be fully formed or best thought out, but I'm willing to take them to people who are willing to look at them critically, and Zach is one of those people. And I really appreciate that. He's willing to tell me if I'm wrong, or tell me, that's a decent idea, but we can do it better this way. And really kind of move the idea forward and not just saying, well, that's not good enough, we're not going to do that. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Same question.
I met Hillary when she was a freshman and a student in the president's leadership class, and I was an advisor for the class. And that's a class all about leadership, so everyone's leadership skills and abilities are really on display for everyone to see. And she impressed me from that point on. And when she began serving on GSB, and earlier on in this year when I began thinking whether or not I wanted to pursue a campaign for president, I wanted to be sure that it was with the right person. And Hillary wasn't my first choice, she was my only choice. I asked Hillary if she wanted to run with me, and had she turned me down, I wouldn't be here. Because I know that Hillary and I, together, we make the best team possible to serve students, because we complement each other so well. Hillary's in the College of Engineering, I'm in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Hillary's a member of the Greek community, and I've lived on campus my whole time at Iowa State. Hillary's female and I'm male. We come at different issues with different perspectives. And I think because of that, we're able to represent a very, very broad swath of students all across campus, coming at issues with different perspectives, discussing our own perspectives on each issue respectfully, but she lets me know when I'm wrong too, and she's not afraid to let me know. And then we reach a conclusion that is really representative of as many students as possible. And I'm really, really glad that Hillary's sitting up here with me. I'm really excited for this campaign with her.
Thank you. Moving on to question 3. Once again, it will be start off with Director Hughes. The question is, how as the GSB president will you work to come across a solution for the overcrowding on campus in the residence halls, classrooms, and during student activities?
This is a question I've heard multiple times during the campaign from students all across campus, but mostly in the residence halls because that's where it's the most obvious place that it happens. I think the overcrowding issue is a good problem to have because it means that more and more students want to come and be a part of the Iowa State community. But at the same time, we have problems with students living in dens, with students not being able to participate in activities. Heck, even last night, if you went to the basketball game, you might have seen that we have too many students to fit in the student section. We're having our growing campus, and we can't necessarily accommodate that anymore. And that's a problem that's larger than GSB. We need to work together with university administration and let them know what the student perspective is so that they can handle issues appropriately. And I think a good step that's been taken already is the Department of Residence, led by Pete England, in the construction of new buildings at Frederickson Court, because they looked into the issue. The student body let their voice be known that they wanted more on-campus housing. And Pete England and the department decided that Frederickson Court housing was the best way to pursue a solution to this problem. And so I think down the line, when we advocate for the student interest and let the university know that, hey, we're getting a little too big for our britches here, maybe we need to slow it down. The university administration takes our concerns into consideration and they act in a way that's appropriate, a great response to solve the problem. So I think that's just one step, and Hillary and I will continue to work that way in the future as well.
Thank you. Same question, Senator Wadisky.
So I guess to address the overcrowding issue in all aspects of Iowa State, as Spencer said, it really will be a partnership and a team effort, not only between GSB and the administration, but also with IRHA and all of the other organizations that really have a large body of students that they can pull to gather concerns, because GSB can do an okay job of polling students, but we know that other organizations can also get the opinions and gather the problems, because we can observe them, but I think it's really important that we partner with other organizations such as IRHA, specifically for the residence hall students, with the Freddie Court Council for those students who are in Frederickson Court, and with as many students as we can reach out to when it comes to overcrowding in classrooms or in labs or having inconvenient lab times. It would be absolutely great to say that we can just instantaneously build things, but it's not fiscally responsible just to magically summon buildings onto campus. A, we don't have the room, and B, the money is an issue. Part of the reason why Iowa State has been recruiting so hard is because in response to the decreasing budget from the state, the response of Iowa State could have either been to raise tuition or to raise enrollment. So to get a bigger pot of money, enrollment has been going up. And we know that there's got to be a fine line between where the student experience goes and how much Iowa State is really after the money. Because at some point, we can't generate enough money from getting more students. So I think that we really need to be on the train of feedback that, hey, this right now is probably about where we need to be, or maybe we need to just be a little bit smaller, because the student experience is starting to suffer. And I think we've noted that, and I think we'll continue to note that. So that's certainly not something I'm afraid to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Fourth question comes from the Vice Commissioner of the Election Commission, Jordan Hutchins, for Dana Diskey.
Students always want to know where their, obviously where their student fee money is going, and a couple of programs have been a hot topic of debate in Senate and among the executive cabinet. Those two specific issues are upgrades to the library and the student organization database. We're just interested on your stances about funding either of those specific examples.
In relation to the student activity fee.
In relation to the student activity fee. It really comes down to something that I think GSB can look into. And I think that we certainly need to, especially when it comes to the library, really investigate how students feel about that. It's not something that I think GSB can just do on a whim. I did write the student organization database bill. That's because I was asked to. My policy in writing legislation for the GSB Senate has been, if somebody requests that I write legislation so that they can request funding, I will write it. I don't always agree with it. I did support it the first time because I felt that it would address some things that student organizations are really looking for, especially when it comes to the ability to use WordPress-like websites without having a large technical investment or spending more money on it to have different web space hosting. And part of the thing is my technical background leads me to understand the fact that we've been working on the student organization database for 10 years. And building and building on old things typically breaks things. And instead of continuing to invest in an old system, eventually there will have to be a new system at some point. Now, all of that aside, part of my platform is to really make GSB reach out and actually create a new position within GSB to kind of do outreach, to gauge the pulse of students really on GSB issues. So whether that be a new initiative, such as investigating whether we should put student fee money towards the library for more outlets in the study areas, or any number of different things that the library could improve the student experience, because a lot of students do use the library. I think it's very important that we make sure that we're doing our outreach, and that's why I've undertaken the idea and already began planning for this outreach position to really gauge what students really want to do with their fee money.
Thank you, Senator Diskey. Same question, Director Hughes.
Well, to get to your question, Jordan, I think that we saw this with the library chair issue before. That they came to GSB, asked for money to fund chairs, and GSB thought at that time it wasn't appropriate to use student activity fee dollars to fund an upgrade in like a departmental upgrade in the library. And so the money didn't go there. But the library still found a way to buy the chairs. If you've been to the library, you've seen that the chairs are there. And so I think that's a good example of an opportunity. That's the project the library wanted to get accomplished. They came to GSB because GSB has funds. We thought it wasn't an appropriate use, and they still got the job done. As far as the student organization database goes, at this point in time, the money's just simply not there for that, and I think that was expressed with the Senate's vote. With how low the capital projects account is at this point in time, it would have been irresponsible to use that money now for that project, but because the database is something that GSB created, and is something that is kind of within the purview of GSB, I think it is appropriate that somewhere down the line we improve that database when the money's there. And so those are kind of two separate issues. In a more general sense, the student activity fee dollars should really be spent to support student activities. And that means student organizations across campus. It means student events that are being hosted by student groups and things of that nature. We're buying equipment for student groups. We're not buying equipment for departments across campus. And one exception is the Memorial Union because it's the hub of student life. So I strongly supported the bill that funded the improvements to the fountain in front of the MU, which, as most of you may know, that they're still working on that. I guess it didn't work the first time through, but we'll keep pushing to get that fixed because that's a symbol of student life on campus. The Memorial Union is just a special place. But in general, student activity fee dollars are meant to support student activities, student organizations, and student events.
Thank you. Our next question is to start off with Spencer Hughes, and the question is, how will you work with international students to make it more inclusive on campus?
Well, I think one great program that we started this year was an initiative of the cabinet, was the creation of kind of a peer mentoring program within international students being paired with a domestic student, so they have the opportunity to really thrive and have the opportunity to know life with a domestic student. And that was actually a program that the idea originally came from something called Cowboy Cousins, which is a program at the Oklahoma State University. Something we learned about at the Big 12 Student Government Conference earlier this year and last year. And it was something that was developed and we ran with that. And that's a good example of a partnership that we had with another school in our conference. But international students are a part of this university just like every other student. And I think that that's a great program that started this year that we're going to work to develop over the next year and continue to work with the International Students Association and the International Students Office so that they have the opportunity to really become assimilated in the culture because, I don't know the experience of being a foreign student, but I'm sure it's not nearly as comfortable as a student who's lived here their whole life, like myself, being a lifelong Iowan. So those are challenges that I'm not as familiar with. And so having a partnership like the peer mentoring system that was implemented this year, it can only be helpful for those students who maybe are a little less comfortable than some other students on this campus.
Thank you. The next question is the same question, but for Senator Radisky.
First, to comment on the mentoring thing, I did also support that when it came through the Senate. I do really like the program. I also want to make sure it's effective and that the students are finding that it is the most useful way that we can support them. But going along with that, within GSB, we don't have much voice from the international student population at Iowa State. And I would really like to increase the partnership with the International Student Council especially. I know when I went and talked to them, they were really excited about the prospect of partnering with us in building a better student experience because they felt like maybe that their voices weren't being heard as well as they could have been. And while I don't want to over-represent those students, I think that we need to make sure that we are representing those students. And whether that be integrating them into GSB in some manner, whether that be a Senate seat for an International Student Council member, or investigating any number of ways that I can pull their input, whether that means I go to their meetings weekly, or I have a representative go to meetings weekly, or we make sure that we understand what international students go through when they come to Iowa State, because these are not experiences that Zach and I have. I've hosted foreign exchange students, but I've never been one. So I understand that there can be culture shock. This is a different culture, but we need to make sure that this part of the Iowa State family is also supported.
Thank you so much. The next question is to start off with Senator Radisky, and it is, How will you connect with organizations on campus and make the GSB presidency more visible on campus?
I think that my goal as president of GSB is not just to make myself more present, but really the whole organization. I think reaching out to the presidents of clubs and organizations is a good step, but I think that I would be wary of worrying too much about just my own presence. I think that it's very important that GSB as a whole makes partnerships with student organizations across campus that represent wide areas of the student life and the student diversity at Iowa State, because GSB really needs to establish those connections to make sure that we have the pulse of what students are concerned about, that we're making sure that we're communicating with student organizations about initiatives that we're undertaking, not only saying, hey, we can help you fund that, but saying, here are some other things that we've been working on. Do you have any thoughts on that? You know, is there a better way to do something on campus that we haven't investigated yet? And I think that that's very important as well. I would really like to see more GSB outreach, whether that comes down to doing open forums with university administrators and students, and talking about some of the issues, whether that be focused in residency areas, whether that be dining, or whether that be, you know, overcrowding. I think that the open forum that was held before Christmas break was a good opportunity for students to interact directly with administrators. But I think that GSB needs to make sure that we're empowering students to have their voices heard too. And with that outreach, I would love to see GSB's presence on an annual basis, maybe in the free speech zone, right outside the library, so that, you know, maybe we're extending the hand to the student body and saying, hey, in 15 seconds, here's what we have. Maybe we'll make videos so that students can find out what GSB is up to without spending more than 2 minutes examining things. So.
Thank you. Same question, Director Hughes.
Well, connecting with the student body is really the most important thing that GSB needs to do better. And we've talked about this a lot when we've been campaigning. Right now, GSB, we take a message, you know, we write it on a piece of paper and we hold it up and say, here's our message, come read it, in a figurative sense. But I think what the better way to communicate with people is to take that message and bring it to the people who are interested in it. So we're going to take that message that we have, whatever it is, and bring it to the students, because the students are present online. That's the top way people look for information. So we're going to bring it to Facebook, we're going to bring it to Twitter, we're going to bring it to our website and make sure that we're really connecting with students across those platforms. Additionally, like I said earlier, Hillary and I really have a very unique perspective on the campus, and that we both are kind of disparate. We represent, I'm not going to say we represent different groups, but we know people in different areas, and so we have different connections across campus, and we can represent a much broader swath of students than a lot of other people. But another idea that I think is a great one that happened earlier and has kind of fallen off, it was implemented by GSB President Luke Rolling a couple of years ago, and he had a bi-weekly meeting with the president of every constituency council. So GSB has a number of constituency councils that represent each college council and each residency area council. And they met twice a month. He called it the Justice League, which I thought was a pretty cool name. I want to bring it back because they are really more in tune with the concerns of each individual council as opposed to GSB, which is student body as a whole. And that's just one additional way that we can better represent students on a more micro level. Because connecting with students, it's not something where you stand in front of a group and talk. It's really those one-on-one interactions, or as close to one-on-one interactions as you can get. And it's a two-way street of communication. That's what connection really means. And Hillary and I want to bring that back to GSB.
Thank you, Director Hughes. The next question you'll start off with. You've mentioned the use of dining doubles, so the question is, dining doubles has been brought up in GSB to be used off campus. Talk about your thoughts on whether to have them stay on campus or to be used off campus.
Well, like I said, I brought this up earlier. This is a program that I've worked on for most of this year. And it's something that I think there's some misinformation about there, so I kind of want to clear the air a little bit. Hillary and I are clear that we're not looking to increase or create any new fees. That's our main goal. If this program would cause an increase in fees, then we don't think it's the right step. What we're looking to do is create an opportunity for ISU Dining to partner with off-campus restaurants and have the opportunity for the profits to be shared between those two entities so that students have the opportunity to use those dining dollars at a place like Fighting Burrito, or at a place like Pita Pit, as just a couple examples. And in the past, this project has been floated by student leaders across campus. They brought it up, they took it to ISU Dining, they said, we want to do this. ISU Dining kind of said, we don't know if it's going to work, and it kind of fell apart. But what's different about it this time is that I started by taking this idea to Campus Town restaurant owner Matthew Goodman. He owns a number of restaurants or some of the food carts on Welch Avenue, but probably his most well-known business is Fighting Burrito. I took it to him, I said, this is a project we really want to do. We know it's challenging for ISU Dining, but how far can you come to meet them in the middle so that we can come up with something that both parties can work with? And we're still in discussions, but that's something that's been moving around because we feel like putting students first means we give them the opportunity to have that kind of choice to use their dining dollars however they want. Because if you've lived in the residence halls, you know that you're required to purchase them, and you don't always get the utility out of them that you'd like. So we think that this partnership is something that could be beneficial for both Iowa State and some of the Ames area businesses. And it's something that I've been working on for a while, and I want to keep developing it because I want to come up with that solution that works for everybody.
Dan, same question.
To talk a little bit about dining dollars off campus. Basically, I'm in favor of it if students don't have to sacrifice the benefits they already have. With ISU Dining's, I guess you could kind of call it a monopoly of the on-campus residents, students, dining investment when it comes down to it. You're required to purchase a meal plan when you're a residence hall student. So that's really pretty much at least a monopoly of part of student money and part of student business. Students do get a little bit of an advantage. ISU Dining does try to meet students in the middle for that and tries to provide convenience to students. And I think that that might be something that we may end up compromising if this deal were to be absolutely pushed through. Would it be good if we can get the benefit of having dining dollars off campus? Certainly. And if we can't have that, if, as in the past, it just kind of falls apart, the wheels fall off, then let's look for other sources. I would really like to generate a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce in Ames to look towards other ways that we can make partnerships that are beneficial to students. Students have SAA as an option, where they can get discounts on various things that are supporting the Student Alumni Association, SALC. But I think that if we can forge a partnership and really have a lot of those off-campus businesses really working towards benefiting students, drawing students in, making deals for students, I think that that would be another opportunity to kind of give students more choice when it comes to it.
Thank you, Senator Radisky. The next question you'll start off with, and it is, what is your single largest contribution to Iowa State thus far?
I think my single largest contribution to Iowa State has really been my investment of time when it comes to new students, both through my time as a Cyclone aide 2 summers ago, as well as my time as a STAR on campus, a student admissions representative, where I helped bring roughly 5,000 students and their families to campus and really help them become part of the Cyclone Nation and really, try to answer any questions and really smooth out their transition into becoming a Cyclone, as well as, showing prospective students my love for Iowa State and what Iowa State really has to offer, as well as answering any questions that they might have. And that's really been, I think, my biggest opportunity to give back outside of GSB. So I think that's really kind of where I wanted to focus that answer, because I think we talk about GSB a lot, but that's one thing that I've been doing outside of GSB.
Thank you, Senator Radisky. The same question to Director Hughes.
Well, I think it's kind of hard to narrow it down to just one. I think Dan talked about being a Cyclone aide, and I can attest to that being a phenomenal experience as well. Dan was a Cyclone aide 2 years ago. I was a Cyclone aide last year. But bringing in new students and just welcoming them to campus is such a phenomenal experience that it's just awesome. I miss it already. But I think some other things, but my time on GSB has really been a great way that I think students have, being plugged into the student community, and I think that's a great way to just be involved and help out any way that I can. And another thing that I think has been awesome is I served on a committee for Dance Marathon this year. And while I don't necessarily see that as directly benefiting students as a whole, what we accomplished for the University of Iowa Children's Hospital together as a community for Dance Marathon is an unforgettable experience.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, I guess my biggest contribution here at Iowa State, you can't narrow it down to one thing, and I've only been a senator for 1 year, but I think the most important thing that Spencer had mentioned already is just building relationships with students from across campus. And I think that's been one of my biggest contributions as a student leader here on campus, is that I am involved in a lot of different organizations and have been able to meet and talk with students from very different backgrounds than my own. And in a student leadership perspective, it's important to do that. It's important to know where students are coming from, students who are very different than yourselves. And for projects that I have worked on during my time in the Senate, that's been very beneficial because I have students from different backgrounds and different perspectives that I can talk to for input.
Is that it? Thank you. I think I have you guys next, so I totally lost my train of thought.
That's right.
I apologize, we're actually going a lot faster than I thought we would. The next question is for Director Hughes. What is the biggest concern facing Iowa State students today, and what will you do as the next GSB president to help solve that problem?
I think as a whole, the biggest issue for the student body has got to be the cost of attending Iowa State and how much debt students are graduating with. And we heard about this earlier this year. We've heard about this for a long time. How Iowa State graduates have had just an absurdly high amount of debt. And while that number is decreasing, it's still a big problem. And that's an issue that's a lot larger than GSB. It goes beyond us. But one thing that we can do to help is try to mobilize the student body as a whole to work with the Iowa legislature and the Board of Regents and make sure that they are doing what they can do to support Iowa State University as a whole. It all kind of comes down to money. The legislature doesn't want to give Iowa State the same amount of money that Iowa State wants to get from the legislature. So if we can mobilize students, I saw at University of Iowa even today, they had a thing going on campus where students could go up to laptops that were set up and send an email to their hometown legislator if they were an Iowa resident, just advocating for the interests of the University of Iowa. I think that's a great thing. I think that's something we could easily do here. Just have a station set up in the MU where in-state students can just go up and shoot a quick email to their hometown legislator and let them know that, hey, we are doing great things here. We're doing things at Iowa State that change the world for decades to come. We need the support to make sure that the students that graduate from Iowa State aren't doing so with such a heavy debt load and have the opportunity to succeed down the line. Because the Iowa State University is one of the best things about this state. And we need to make sure that that kind of support is recognized from the Iowa legislature. So that's just one thing.
Thank you, Director Hughes. Same question to Senator Wojcicki.
I would agree that the biggest issue that faces students is the amount of money that they pay and the resulting student debt. So aside from doing pretty much all of the things that Mr. Hughes commented about, I would really like to utilize GSB to communicate what resources on campus that students have. GSB puts money towards the student debt counseling on campus. I don't know if you know about that resource, but basically there are people who GSB is using student fee money for to fund their salaries so that they will be a resource for students to help understand debt issues and understand how credit card debt works, how loans work, all of those things, as well as partnering with the financial aid office and other resources on campus that really provide financial assistance to students. I think that GSB needs to make sure that we're being very transparent that that's where student fee money is going as well. Aside from making sure that we are lobbying and we are involving the whole student body, or as many students as we can get involved in lobbying and having a presence in Des Moines with the state legislature, because as you mentioned, it really is all about the appropriation when it comes to working towards lowering student tuition and those sorts of issues. But we also have to make sure that we're doing everything we can on campus to make sure that we're lowering prices, but also maintaining the student experience. Because really, when you take away money from tuition, and if it's not being made up in the legislature, we're cutting services to students. So we need to make sure that we're doing that as responsibly as we can and not sacrificing the student experience for the sake of less. Because sometimes students will get less of their money's worth if they're paying less, and that's the fact of the matter.
Thank you, Senator Radisky. And the last question tonight will go to you to start off with. Currently, ISU students are not too involved with the GSB process, besides being actually in the GSB Senate or exec. So my question is, how will you help bring students to be more involved in the GSB process and allow them to know how their fees are being used and how the representatives are using their time?
Zach, would you like to take the transparency part of that one?
Sure. I think it's obvious that many students don't know what's going on in GSB currently. And Dan and I would really like to fix that by first making senators knowledgeable of what GSB is and what it can do for students. Because if GSB senators don't know what's going on, they obviously can't go out and spread the message of GSB. So first is getting those senators through a new transition meeting at the beginning of each Senate term. So that way they know where the student fees are going, they know what GSB can do, they know services that we fund like student debt counseling. Because many students don't know that. So by making GSB senators aware of what's going on, they're able to go out, spread that word, talk to student organizations about what GSB can do for them and how we can better serve students.
And I think it's not only that, maybe, as Mr. Hughes puts it, that GSB has just been writing things on a sign and holding it up. I don't think that going online will just solve our problem. I think that's still holding up a sign. I think that we need to make sure that resources are online, and that you can refer to our online source, but I think that really people connections is going to be much stronger. Making sure that GSB senators, as Zach said, are empowered to talk about what GSB is doing and how GSB operates, and really explain that. Maybe GSB needs to become a little bit more simple, because it's not very simple when it comes down to it. GSB has its hands in a lot of things at Iowa State, but I think that we really need to make sure that we're empowering students to understand and utilize the services that GSB can offer, and really help make sure that students are building a better student experience, and that they're empowered to do so through GSB.
Thank you. Same question, Director Hughes.
This was really one of the big projects that I worked on over the course of this year as Director of Student Affairs. When I took over in the fall, GSB had a dormant Twitter account. And I said, Twitter is a great way to connect with students, so I took it over. And today, at ISUGSB, which you should give a follow if you haven't already, has more than 550 followers, gains 4 or 5 every day, and every single day there's interactions with students, be they at replies or retweets. We're connecting with students on a platform that we weren't connecting with them before. And that's just one example of a way that we can connect with students that we didn't do before, and that's important. I talked a little bit earlier about my philosophy of taking our message and going to students. And the internet is a great way to do that, but it's certainly not the only way. Connecting with students, and as you can see here, certainly we could do a much better job, seeing all the empty chairs in this room particularly, we could do a much better job of connecting with students just by making sure that the information is available to them about what's going on and what's happening in GSB. And there's a number of different ways to do that. There are so many different ways for GSB to connect with students that I could sit up here and list them all off, and it would take a long time. But the more important issue is actually using those avenues that are available to us. And I think we've kind of gotten locked in to a certain rut in terms of how our PR works and how our message is being relayed to students, that we use the same channels over and over again. Those channels aren't effective when there's nearly an infinite amount of ways to connect with students as a whole that we aren't taking advantage of. So to get students more involved with and more knowledgeable about what's going on, we just need to make sure that there's communication going on, because connection and communication is really a two-way street. We share our message with students and we make it available, and then they respond in whatever manner they think is appropriate, and then we adjust our message based on that response. It's all about communication. That's the most important thing.
Thank you, Director Hughes. That ends the question portion of the debate. We are now moving to closing statements. We'll start with Director Hughes.
Well, thank you all again for coming out tonight, and thank you to those who are watching on ISUTV and on the Daily's YouTube broadcast. It was a fun debate. We talked about a few things, but Hillary and I are just going to talk a little bit about our platform, what we stand for, our Students First campaign, and why we think that you should vote for us on March 11th and 12th.
Yeah, so Spencer and I really do have that focus on putting students first. And as Spencer mentioned earlier in the debate, it's being completely resistant to any increase in fees, because we understand that is the biggest issue facing students right now, that cost of education. And another way we're going to continue to support reducing that cost for students is looking at ways that supplemental instruction materials that students have to purchase overlap in different mediums, and how can we help students save money on things that they have to purchase for class. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Spencer.
Yeah, you know, we really didn't get the opportunity to touch on what I think is the biggest issue of the campaign, the GSB executive payments. But that's really something that Hillary and I feel is a way to really put students first in GSB. When there are student organization officers that get as much as $37,000 a year to serve in GSB, something is wrong, and we need to change that. And putting students first means taking that money and putting it back where student organizations have the opportunity to access it. Because everybody up here knows that there are more and more students asking for money from GSB every year. And as we're going through the regular allocation cycle now, we see it. We're cutting money from every student group that's asking for funding. And we have a pot of money as much as $90,000 that's just sitting there waiting for us to use it better. And Hillary and I have identified a way to use it better. That's what we're trying to do by getting rid of the GSB executive payments. That's just one example of the ways that we're trying to put students first. And there's a lot more available on our website at hughesclutcher.com, as well as on our Facebook page, Hughes and Clutcher for Iowa State. We'd appreciate it if you go check those out, maybe give us a like on Facebook. But there'll be a lot more opportunity for us to really share our message between now and the election. But in case we don't have the chance to share it with you, we'd really appreciate your vote on March 11th and 12th. And once again, we just want to thank you for coming out to this debate or for watching online. And we really appreciate the opportunity to share our message with you.
Thank you, Director Hughes. Closing remarks from Senator Radisky.
So I think what's become evident tonight is that really, for the most part, we agree on a lot of things that address students, and that the issues really can't be taken in a way that moves students backwards. We both want to move students forward. But I think that really the difference between our campaigns is that Zach and I are envisioning a GSB that is working better to empower students. We can't do that as just an executive. We can't do a two-person game. We don't think that GSB can really function as just an executive. We think that GSB really needs to make sure that it's all on the same page, so that it's empowering students, not only through putting the information out there on where students are, and putting the information to students on social media and our website, but also making sure that we're generating conversation. We're empowering more people to have conversations about the things that are important to students. And that means more than just Zach and I. That means more than just our cabinet. It really means as many students as we can empower to talk about issues. And that's very important to Zach and I. We talked about our campaign in the beginning with CPR, bringing GSB back to life and working for students through communication, the projects that we've been touting, and especially representation. We know that those are the things that GSB really needs to focus on in the upcoming year. And so Zach and I, we really would appreciate you partnering with us in building a better student experience and really looking into helping us make GSB better, because we have our ideas about how to empower students through GSB, but it's very important that we get outside perspectives too. So with that, I think Zach and I would like to thank you for being present, whether in person or through either of the recordings going on. Thank you for watching. Zach and I would really appreciate if you checked out our website. You can find more information about our platform, more about us, as well as see our endorsements, and check out our Facebook, our Twitter, and, well, have a nice night. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Radisky. I just want to thank again the ISU TV and Iowa State Daily for coming out and filming this debate. I want to thank Senators Clutcher, Radisky, and Bauer, and Director Hughes for participating tonight. I want to remind everyone on the audience and viewing at home that the next debate will be March 7th at 6 p.m. back here in the Coleman Room. Anyone that is interested in submitting a question, they can contact me at Gunthel, G-U-E-N-T-H-E-L, at iastate.edu. Thank you, and have everyone a safe travel home.